The knock didn't sound human. It sounded like survival. 3 sharp hits echoed through Clara Whitmore's cabin, cutting through the howl of a violent snowstorm. She froze. The wooden spoon slipped slightly in her hand, as the wind outside screamed like it wanted to tear the cabin apart. No one came up this mountain in winter. No one. Not unless they were desperate or dying. The knock came again. Weaker this time. Clara's heart started pounding. Her eyes moved toward the rifle hanging above the mantel. The last strangers who came here had laughed at her, mocked her, left her with nothing but silence again. But this knock was different. She stepped toward the window and wiped away the frost. What she saw made her breath catch. A man stood outside. Barely. The storm was trying to bury him alive. His coat was frozen stiff with ice, and in his arms, a child. The boy hung limp against his chest. Too still. Too quiet. Behind them, 2 horses stood trembling, ribs visible, barely holding on. Clara swallowed hard. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. In a storm, you don't ask questions. You open the door. She grabbed the rifle, paused, then slowly put it down, and opened the door. The wind exploded inside. Snow blasted across the floor as the man stepped in, carrying the boy like he was holding his entire world together. "Ma'am," just one word, but it carried exhaustion, fear, and something deeper, a father who had nothing left to lose. Clara stepped aside. "By the fire, quickly." He knelt down and gently laid the boy near the warmth. Clara rushed to grab her only spare quilt, the one her mother had made, and wrapped it tightly around the child. Up close, she saw it. The boy wasn't just tired, he was freezing. "How long have you been riding?" she asked quickly. "Too long," the man replied. "No explanation, no story, just truth." Clara moved fast. Water on the fire, stew into bowls, weak coffee poured with shaking hands. Minutes passed. Then slowly, the boy's eyes opened, bright blue, soft, still polite, even through exhaustion. "Thank you," he whispered. Something inside Clara shifted. Something warm. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. That night, the storm raged harder, but inside that small cabin, 3 strangers sat by the fire. And Clara realized something. They weren't just lost. They were running. The storm didn't stop that night. It howled like something alive, beating against the walls, testing the strength of the cabin. But inside, there was warmth. The boy sat close to the fire, wrapped tightly in Clara's quilt. Color slowly returned to his face. Life returning. Inch by inch. The man, however, didn't relax, not even for a second. He sat nearby, barely touching his food. His eyes never left the boy, watching, guarding, like the world outside was still trying to take him away. Clara noticed everything. The way he moved, the way he stayed alert, the way silence seemed natural to him. "Eat," she said softly, pushing the bowl closer to him. "You'll need strength." He nodded slightly, but still. He watched the boy first. Only after the child finished eating did he take a bite himself. That told her everything. Later that night, the boy fell asleep, peacefully this time. The man stood by the window, staring out into the storm, not admiring it, not fearing it, just watching. Clara stepped closer, her voice quiet. "You're not just lost." He didn't turn. "No." "Then what are you running from?" A pause, long enough to feel heavy. Finally. "Something that won't stop looking." That was all he said. But it was enough. Clara didn't ask more. She knew when silence was a shield. Morning came pale and cold. The storm had weakened, but it hadn't let go completely. Clara woke early, and moved quietly around the kitchen. Flour, water, fire. She used the last of what she had. Biscuits, and the plum jam she had been saving for Christmas. When the man stepped in, he didn't hesitate. He started helping, like he belonged there. No instructions, no questions, just work. That caught her off guard. "You cook?" she asked. "I survive," he replied simply. Again, no pride, no explanation, just truth. The boy woke up smiling, a small, tired smile, but real. "Where are we, Pa?" he asked softly. The man looked at him, then at Clara. "Safe," he said, "for now." Clara noticed something then, something that didn't match their story. The boy's clothes, worn, but expensive. His boots, fine leather, not made for poor travelers. The man's coat, old but carefully stitched, not cheap, not careless. These weren't drifters. They were something else. "How far are you headed?" she asked. The man paused, then answered carefully. "Far enough." That was when Clara made her decision. "You're not leaving today." He looked at her, surprised. "Your horses are done," she continued, "and your boy almost froze to death." A moment passed. Then he said, "We can work. Not beg, not ask for pity. Work." Clara glanced around her cabin, the broken fence, the sagging barn, the empty woodpile. Since her father died, she had been fighting everything alone. 3 days, she said. He nodded. 3 days. The boy smiled instantly, the first real smile. "I'm Tommy," he said. The man finally turned fully toward her. "Nathaniel." "Clara," she replied. Their hands met across the table, rough wood beneath them, warmth between them. And for the first time in years, Clara's home didn't feel empty. The next morning felt different, not quieter, not easier, but fuller. For the first time in years, Clara didn't wake up alone. Outside, the snow still covered the ridge in thick white layers, but the storm had calmed enough to let the world breathe again. And in that silence came a sound she hadn't heard in a long time. Thud, crack, thud, an axe. Clara stood by the window, watching. Nathaniel moved with steady rhythm, splitting wood like a man who had done it his whole life. Each swing was clean, controlled, powerful. The sound echoed across the ridge. And something inside Clara shifted. It reminded her of her father, of mornings filled with work instead of silence. She didn't realize she was smiling until she felt it. Behind her. Tommy burst into laughter. She turned to see him running after a stubborn hen, slipping in the snow but refusing to give up. "I got it! I got it!" he shouted, before the hen darted away again. Clara laughed, a real laugh, the kind she hadn't heard from herself in years, and just like that, the cabin didn't feel lonely anymore. Days passed, not quickly, not slowly, just naturally. Nathaniel fixed the broken fence line, reinforced the barn door, stacked enough firewood to last through the worst of winter. He didn't talk much, but his actions spoke clearly. He wasn't just staying. He was building. Tommy became a small light in Clara's life, following her everywhere, asking questions, learning everything. She showed him how to gather eggs properly, how to keep from getting pecked, how to move slowly so animals wouldn't scare. And in return, he gave her something she didn't realize she needed. Joy, simple, unfiltered, honest. Evenings became her favorite part of the day. All three of them sat near the fire, the warmth filling the small cabin, the silence no longer empty, but shared. Clara would glance at Nathaniel sometimes. He always looked calm on the outside, but his eyes, they told a different story. Always watching, always thinking, like a man waiting for something to catch up to him. One night she finally asked, "You ever stop looking over your shoulder?" Nathaniel didn't answer right away. The fire cracked softly between them. Then he said, "Not yet." That was all. But it confirmed what she already knew. Whatever he was running from, it wasn't small, and it wasn't far behind. By the third day, the sky cleared completely. Bright, cold, open. The storm was over. Clara stood at the stove that morning, stirring oats, but her chest felt tight. Outside, she could hear Nathaniel preparing the horses. It was time. Tommy's voice carried through the air. "Pa, do we have to go?" Clara closed her eyes. "Yes," Nathaniel answered gently. "We can't stay where we're not invited." The words hit harder than they should have. Clara stepped outside. The cold didn't matter. "You're leaving," she said quietly. Nathaniel didn't look at her. "The trail's clear." Tommy sat on the steps, silent now, his small face heavy with disappointment. Clara's chest tightened. She didn't want them to go. Not yet. Not like this. Then suddenly, she said it. "The horse." Nathaniel looked up. "One of the shoes is loose," she added quickly. He frowned and crouched down to check. The shoe wasn't loose. He knew it. She knew it. Their eyes met. A silent understanding passed between them. After a long pause, Nathaniel stood up. "Then we wait one more day." Tommy lit up instantly, throwing his arms around Clara, and for the first time, she allowed herself to hold on. Because deep down, she knew something she hadn't said out loud yet. She didn't want them to leave at all. That extra day didn't feel borrowed. It felt important, like something unfinished needed time to breathe. Clara and Nathaniel worked side by side that morning, closer than before. More natural. No distance, no hesitation. Tommy stayed between them, laughing, learning, completely unaware that something was about to change. Nathaniel built a small woodshed beside the cabin. Strong, straight, not temporary. Clara noticed that. He wasn't working like a man passing through. He was working like a man who wanted to leave something behind. Something that would last. That evening, the sky opened wide and clear. Stars filled the darkness like scattered light. They stood outside together. Quiet. Calm. "I should tell you something," Nathaniel said. Clara's heart skipped. She knew this moment would come. The truth. But instead of asking, she shook her head gently. "Not tonight." He looked at her, surprised. "When you're ready," she added softly. For a second, something changed in his eyes. Relief, respect, maybe even trust. Inside, Tommy suddenly cried out from a nightmare. Nathaniel moved instantly, gone from her side in a second. Clara stayed on the porch, looking up at the sky. And that's when she realized something dangerous. She wasn't just helping them anymore. She was falling for them. Both of them. And she still didn't know who they really were. The next afternoon, everything changed. 3 riders appeared at the bottom of the ridge, fast, focused, not lost. Clara felt it immediately. Trouble. Nathaniel saw them too. And in that moment, everything about him shifted. The calm man disappeared. In his place stood someone harder, sharper. "Get inside," he said quietly. But it was already too late. The riders stormed into the yard, kicking up snow and dirt. The man in front sat tall, dressed in fine clothes, but his face carried arrogance, the kind that came from power. "Afternoon, Clara," he called with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Clara stepped forward. "You can leave, Lucas." He ignored her. His gaze moved past her, landing on Nathaniel. "Well now," he smirked. "Who do we have here?" Nathaniel didn't answer. didn't move. Tommy stood half hidden behind him. Lucas leaned forward in his saddle. "You know there's a railroad coming through this land," he said casually. "Right through your property." Clara's jaw tightened. "Not for sale." Lucas chuckled. "That's funny, considering you're behind on your payments." The words hit hard. Clara felt heat rise in her chest. How did he know that? But before she could speak, Nathaniel took one small step forward. It wasn't aggressive, it wasn't loud, but it was enough. Lucas's horse shifted nervously. "What's your name?" Lucas asked sharply. Nathaniel's voice stayed calm. "Doesn't matter." Lucas narrowed his eyes. "A man who hides his name." He smirked. "Is hiding a lot more than that." "Get off my land," Clara snapped. Lucas laughed lightly. "Think about my offer," he said, turning his horse. "Before you lose everything anyway." And just like that, they rode off, leaving silence behind, but not peace. Clara turned to Nathaniel immediately. "Tell me the truth," she demanded. "Who are you?" He looked at her. For real this time. No distance, no walls, but also no full answer. "A man trying to do right," he said quietly. Clara shook her head. "That's not enough." His jaw tightened slightly. "It's all I can give." The words hung heavy between them. That night, Clara didn't sleep. She lay awake, listening, to the wind, to the silence, and then to something else. Movement. Nathaniel. Packing. Tommy's soft voice broke the quiet. "Pa, we can't leave her." Clara's heart cracked. Nathaniel's answer came low and heavy. "A man respects what's asked of him." Tears filled her eyes, but she stayed silent, because now she understood something too late. She hadn't asked them to stay. Clara didn't remember falling asleep. Or maybe she never really did. Morning came quietly. Too quietly. No axe, no laughter, no small footsteps running across the floor. Just silence. The kind she knew too well. She stood near the window, her hands trembling slightly as she looked outside. The yard was empty. The horses were gone. They were gone. And just like that, her home felt cold again. Not because of the winter, but because something inside her had been taken with them. Clara stepped back slowly. Her legs gave out, and she sank to her knees. She had survived worse. Loneliness, hunger, loss. But this felt different. This felt like she had pushed away something good, before she even understood it. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, melting bits of snow from the roof. Drops fell steadily outside, like time moving forward without her. Then, a knock. Her heart jumped instantly. She rushed to the door, hope rising for just a second. But when she opened it wasn't them. It was Moses, her nearest neighbor, a man who rarely visited anyone. He stepped inside without asking, his eyes serious. "You sent them away," he said. Clara nodded slowly. Moses studied her for a moment, then asked, "Do you even know who that man is?" She shook her head, and that's when everything changed. "Nathaniel Thorne Harrison," Moses said. The name meant nothing at first, but then he added something else. "Only son of the Harrison Railroad Empire." Clara's breath caught. The richest family in 3 territories. The room felt smaller, heavier. "That's not possible," she whispered. Moses nodded. "His wife died last year, childbirth." "A baby didn't make it." Clara's chest tightened. "He walked away from it all," Moses continued, "took his son, and disappeared." Silence filled the cabin. Every moment replayed in her mind. The way he worked, the way he spoke, the way he protected his son. It all made sense now. He wasn't just running, he was hiding. from a life he didn't want anymore. Moses stepped closer. "Lucas knows," he said. Clara's heart dropped. "He's planning to expose him in town. Tonight." That was it. No hesitation, no doubt. Clara grabbed her coat. "When?" she asked. "Now." She didn't say another word. She ran. The ride down the mountain was dangerous. Snow covered the path. Ice hid beneath it. Her horse nearly slipped more than once. But she didn't slow down. In her mind, she saw Tommy's face, heard his voice. "We can't leave her." And Nathaniel's reply, "A man respects what's asked." "No," she whispered. "Not this time. This time." She wouldn't let them leave. By the time Clara reached town, the sun was already fading. Cold air cut through her lungs as she rode straight into the main street. Lanterns flickered. People gathered. Something was happening. A crowd had formed in the square. Voices low, tension high. And at the center of it, Lucas, standing tall like he owned the place. Clara pushed through the crowd without slowing down. People turned. Whispers spread. Then she saw him. Nathaniel, standing below the porch, still, silent. Tommy clung tightly to his side. They looked alone, surrounded. "Right on time," Lucas called loudly, his voice cutting through the noise. He smiled when he saw Clara. But it wasn't friendly. "Perfect," he said. "Now everyone gets to see the full story." Clara stepped forward, her legs shaking, but she didn't stop. "What are you doing, Lucas?" she demanded. He ignored her, raised his voice for the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "meet the man hiding among you." He pointed at Nathaniel. "Nathaniel Harrison." Murmurs spread instantly. Shock, confusion, curiosity. "The missing heir of the Harrison Railroad Empire," Lucas continued, "pretending to be a drifter." All eyes turned to Nathaniel. But he didn't move. Didn't defend himself. Didn't deny it. Clara stepped forward, placing herself between Lucas and Nathaniel. "Call me poor all you want," she said loudly, her voice steady now. "But I gave shelter in a storm." The crowd quieted. She pointed at Lucas. "What have you given?" Silence. "Threats?" she continued. "Pressure? Fear?" People began to shift, listening now. Lucas scoffed. "He lied to you," he snapped. Clara shook her head. "He fixed my fence," she said. "He chopped my firewood. He worked harder than any man I've seen." Her voice rose slightly. "He treated me like I mattered." The words hit, hard. "And if that's lying," she added, "I'll take it." A ripple moved through the crowd. For the first time, Lucas looked uncertain. Then, Nathaniel stepped forward. "I hid my name," he said calmly. All eyes locked on him. "But I didn't hide my work." Silence followed. Heavy. Real. Lucas laughed sharply, trying to take control again. "She's still in debt," he snapped. "By tomorrow that land won't even be hers." Clara froze. But before fear could return, Nathaniel reached into his coat and pulled out folded papers. "Already handled," he said. Lucas blinked. "What?" "I bought her debt this morning," Nathaniel said calmly. "The land is hers." Gasps filled the square. Clara stared at him, shock washing over her. Even after she told him to leave, he had still protected her. "You think money makes you better?" Lucas snapped. Nathaniel shook his head slightly. "I didn't buy anything," he said. "I found it." A pause. "In a cabin on a mountain." That was it. Lucas looked around. The crowd wasn't with him anymore. Not even close. Slowly, he backed down, turned, and walked away. Just like that. It was over. The tension broke. The crowd began to disperse, and for the first time, Nathaniel looked at Clara. Not guarded, not distant, just real. "The land is yours," he said quietly. "I just wanted you free." Clara stepped closer. "And you?" she asked softly. "Are you free?" He didn't answer. Before he could, Tommy slipped his small hands into both of theirs. "Can we go home now?" he asked. Home. The word hit differently this time. Clara looked at Nathaniel. He looked back at her. No walls left, no distance, just a choice. And this time, she didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said softly. "Let's go home." Spring didn't arrive gently that year. It came alive. Snow melted into clear streams that ran down the mountain like the land itself was waking up. Wildflowers pushed through the soil, color returned to the ridge. And Clara's cabin was no longer silent. It was alive. Nathaniel didn't just stay. He built. A second room rose beside the cabin. Strong wooden beams, carefully placed, not rushed, not temporary. The barn was repaired properly this time. The fence stood straight. The garden, protected and growing. Everywhere Clara looked, she saw proof of something she had never truly had before. Someone staying. Tommy's laughter filled the air every morning, running through the yard, chasing chickens, learning the land like he belonged to it. And maybe he did. Clara stood in the doorway one morning watching them. Nathaniel teaching Tommy how to mend a fence. Patient, calm, present, a father, not just surviving, but living. She placed her hand gently over her stomach, a soft smile forming. Life was growing again. Not from fear, not from loss, but from something stronger. Choice. They married in early summer. No crowd, no grand ceremony, just the mountains, the open sky, and one witness, Moses. Clara wore her mother's dress. Simple, but full of meaning. Tommy stood proudly beside them, like he had always been part of it. And when Nathaniel took her hand, there was no hesitation left, no secrets, no distance, just truth. The cabin that once held loneliness, now held everything. Months passed. Autumn painted the ridge in gold and fire. The air turned crisp again. Clara stood at the doorway one evening, watching the sun dip behind the mountains. Nathaniel walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her gently. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly. He looked down at her. "Regret what?" "Leaving all that wealth behind." A small smile appeared on his face. "I didn't leave wealth," he said. He glanced towards Tommy, running through the field, holding a wildflower like it was treasure. Then back at her. "I found the real kind." Clara's eyes softened. At that moment, Tommy ran toward them. "For you," he said proudly, handing her a small wild rose. "The prettiest mar on the mountain." Clara laughed, pulling him close. Nathaniel's arm tightened slightly around both of them. The wind moved softly through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and something deeper. Peace, the same storm that once brought strangers to her door, had given her everything. A family, a future, a home, and now, when the wind knocked against her cabin, she didn't feel fear anymore. She felt grateful, because she knew exactly who stood inside. And for the first time in her life, she knew one thing for certain: she would never be alone again.